In light of the recent events, the college football playoff is officially over. TCU got absolutely destroyed by Georgia, 65-7. Most people were not entertained. They were not happy. They were not satisfied with how the college football playoff national championship game unfolded on Monday night. And I can understand why. Because sitting there watching a blowout is never fun for anybody. And you know what? I understand. Sometimes blowouts happen. Sometimes teams just get overmatched. Sometimes the moment's too big. Sometimes they just don't show up to play. And all of that is completely understandable. And it makes sense in some circumstances and some examples that you can use. But that wasn't the case in the national championship on Monday night. What actually happened and unfolded in front of America's eyes is one team in the Georgia Bulldogs was significantly better than another. And that may have unfolded no matter who Georgia played. But that argument to begin with, the initial argument that a lot of people talk about with Georgia just is the best team in the country. I agree with that. And I think Georgia was by far the best team in college football this past season. But they beat Ohio State by 1 point. But then Michigan beat Ohio State. But then TCU beat Michigan. All of it and none of it and everything and nothing makes sense about the situation. But one thing I can tell you for sure as a solution to fixing the college football playoff, and we will get to that in a second. But first, we have some items that we need to discuss because primarily speaking, these are a couple different videos that I came across that I thought were interesting. So there was a lot of negative reaction and a lot of negative output for this take and this video. All right. So this is a clip from Bussin' with the Boys with Will Compton. Taylor Lewan is right behind me, as you can see here. Taylor Lewan, and they're interviewing Tennessee head coach Josh Heupel. Let's listen to what Josh Heupel has to say about how to get the college football playoff right. All right. Let's listen to what he has to say.
What layout would you have if you got to create your own playoff?
I think it's real simple. You take the top 4 teams from the SEC and play it out.
Get the fuck out of here, That was ridiculous. God. You gotta respect that, but bullshit on that.
Is it really? I mean, you got Ohio State, you got Michigan.
Dog,
is it really?
That's what I'm saying. You guys let.
So he's sitting there talking about how the best way to format the college football playoff is to make it the top 4 teams from the SEC. And they freak out and they act like that's the most ridiculous thing they've ever heard. It's completely asinine. It makes no sense. All this different stuff. And he follows it with, is it? Is it crazy? And listen, I can sit here and tell you right now that my favorite football team is Alabama. And the conference of football that I primarily watch is the SEC. But there is not a single person on the planet that we currently live on in the Milky Way galaxy that could explain or justify or give me any reasoning that would make any sense that the SEC is not the best conference. Because the SEC in college football is far, far, far and away the best conference of the Power 5. And it is really not close at all. That doesn't mean there aren't other good teams in other conferences. But the SEC has the most good teams, the highest level of talent, the best players, the best coaches, the best home field advantage stadiums, minus a couple others in a couple different conferences. And that was on display throughout this college football playoff. You have Georgia playing Ohio State, beating them by 1 point. Georgia didn't come to play. Ohio State did come to play, and Georgia still beat them. And then, when you get a matchup between Georgia and TCU, Georgia absolutely just bullies them. Dominates the line of scrimmage, dominates the passing game on offense and on defense, dominates the line of scrimmage with the run game on offense and on defense, and TCU never had a chance. At one point in this game, this is what was happening on the Georgia sideline. They're eating chicken wings. They're eating chicken wings. I let that play a couple times because I think you guys need to understand, if they're eating chicken wings on the sideline, that shouldn't be going on in a national championship game. Stetson Bennett got pulled off the field with 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That type of stuff shouldn't happen in a national championship game. And it shouldn't even get to that point to begin with. The College Football Playoff Committee has single-handedly, time and time again, done a massive disservice to the country, to the College Football Playoff Committee, or to the community, I should say, of college football, to everybody involved. They've done a massive disservice time and time and time again. Why? Because they don't actually vote for who they believe are the top 4 best teams in the country. Who they vote for is the teams that they feel like deserve it. Teams like TCU, who went undefeated in the Big 12, but they didn't play anybody legitimately good. They played a lot of top-ranked teams. They played a lot of top 25 teams. But they didn't have to play at Tennessee. Didn't have to play at Georgia. Didn't have to play at LSU. And the level of competition in the Big 12 is simply not the same as it is in the SEC. And because of that, they went undefeated in the regular season. And under the current guidelines and considerations and circumstances of what we all as a community have apparently just accepted to get into the college football playoff, TCU certainly deserved it. And I don't think they were a bad team. But what I do think is the College Football Playoff Committee needs to be entirely disbanded. And that is part 1 of the solution of how to fix the college football playoff. They need to be entirely disbanded. Take the group of guys, whoever it is, whoever they've appointed to these positions, and get them out. Because they do not deserve the power. They do not deserve to have the responsibility to essentially determine who wins the national championship. Because if I'm telling you right now, if they put the top 4 teams in that were the actual top 4 best teams in the country this year, it wouldn't have gone the way it was. Georgia certainly wouldn't have had an absolute cakewalk, easy, smooth ride to the national championship in the game itself. They would have played potentially Ohio State, or they would have played Tennessee, or they would have played Alabama, because those are the top 4 teams in the country: Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and Tennessee. And any mix of those other 3 teams would have given Georgia a hell of a lot better fight than TCU did. And the head-to-head matchup situation, the only losses situation, all of that consideration is the second part of how to fix the college football playoff. Take wins and take losses out of it. Not entirely, but you cannot sit there and put wins and losses as the main and basically the primary deciding factor between how teams perform, because that's completely discounting the level of competition, the teams, the home field advantage, the road games you have to play, and everything else. And all it's turning the season into is black and white. Did they win? Did they lose? Did they win? Did they lose? Because at the end of the day, when we sit here and we talk about, oh, this team's undefeated, this team has 1 loss, this team has 2 losses, it's never a question of how did they lose. And the only time that starts to come into consideration is if 2 teams have the same record. But if you are a team that has a lot of talent and you're really good, and you're in a conference that's not good, and you just roll through the schedule, you go undefeated, and you win your conference championship game, and you started the season at number 5, number 6, number 7, all that needs to happen is one of the teams in front of you just has to lose once. Doesn't matter how they lose. Doesn't matter who they're playing. Doesn't matter the score. Doesn't matter what happened in the actual game. If we worked in a hypothetical, right, and we went USC wins the entire every game they play in the regular season. They go 12-0, they get to the Pac-12 championship, and they win that. They finish the year 13-0, Pac-12 champion. And in front of them for the entirety of the season was, let's say, an undefeated LSU team and an undefeated Georgia team. Georgia's number 1. Let's say Ohio State's number 2. Clemson's number 3. And then LSU is at number 4. They're both undefeated, LSU and Georgia, and they play each other in the SEC championship game. Georgia would beat LSU, or vice versa, whatever the case is. And then that undefeated Pac-12 USC team would slide above whoever would have lost between LSU and Georgia. And this is a hypothetical situation, but this is how it goes. This is how it is right now. USC, as an undefeated Pac-12 champion, would slide up, and LSU, let's say LSU loses to Georgia in the SEC championship, 32-31. LSU loses by 1 point to the best team in the country. They put up 31 points on a historically good defense. They would drop to number 5, and USC would slide up to number 4. And that's not right. And that's how it is right now. That's exactly how it would unfold if that situation came up in the current college football playoff format. Because USC is undefeated. They won all their games. They won their conference championship. They are not considering at any point in that situation all the other games that LSU played, the offensive efficiency that they had as a team, the defensive efficiency they had as a team, the caliber to play, the team that they had to play against, how they lost, and every other factor that you need to consider. Road game, neutral site, home game, margin of victory, margin of defeat. Like I said, all these different factors. So the third and final thing that you need to put in to the college football playoff selection process and the way that these teams get put in is you have to begin assigning metric and statistical value to each one of these teams. Every team that's in consideration. And you have to assign value for how they lost a game. Margin of loss, margin of victory. Road loss, road win. Home loss, home win. Offensive numbers and efficiency based on the defenses they played against and how they performed. How did their defense perform against high caliber offenses? All of those metrics can be quantified. The College Football Playoff Committee is just choosing not to. They're just choosing not to because they want the power. They want the ability to decide basically who's going to be in the college football playoff. And what we're going to see and what is going to happen and what's going to start to lose the college football playoff is shockingly supporting and promoting a 12-team college football playoff, and it will be happening in 2 years from now. They're going to lose all credibility and all power that they have because they're just going to sit there and vote in like they've been voting, staying with the same process. Well, this team has this number of wins. This team did this. Well, Alabama has 2 losses and TCU only has 1, so TCU is a better football team than Alabama. They're going to put them higher. And what's going to happen when you get 12-team playoff is you're going to have probably 4, 5, 6 SEC teams when it's all said and done, when it's all done with consideration. You're going to find Georgia in there, Alabama in there, Tennessee in there, LSU in there, potentially Florida, all these different teams. And even if it is just those top 4 that I mentioned, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida, let's just say it's those top 4. And let's say, for argument's sake, one of them or 2 of them are in the top 4 and get a first-round bye. When those teams start to play out the 12-team college football playoff, you're going to find that it's going to go down from 12 to 8 after the first round of the playoff. And there's still going to be 4 teams from the SEC of the remaining 8. And then after that, you're going to go from 8 to 4, and you're going to find that there's 3 SEC teams of the 4 remaining. And you're going to sit back, and I'm going to sit back, and we're going to have different reactions. And maybe you guys, depending on who you are as a viewer, you're not. But all these people that have bought into the college football playoff situation are going to sit back and go, this is crazy. How can there be so many SEC teams in here? And I'm going to sit back and say, because the playoff committee has been doing it wrong from the start. They have too much power. They're valuing the wrong things. And it doesn't matter about feelings. It doesn't matter about storylines. It doesn't matter about any of that. If they would have put it in the top 4 teams this year, the product probably would have been more entertaining. And there wouldn't have been a blowout. And a massive disservice and disappointment to the entire college football landscape. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys think that this is the right take, the wrong take, how we can improve the college football playoff selection process, because ultimately it's not the right way. Whatever they're doing right now is not the right way. Because we continue to see time and time again a Pac-12 team sneak in, Cincinnati type team get in, and whether it's in the first round or it's in the national championship, they get absolutely destroyed. Just destroyed every single time. And the only time these games are hyper competitive and riveting is when it's a high level team like Clemson with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, or it's a high level team like Ohio State, or it's Alabama, or it's Georgia. And the rest of the games are blowouts. And they're not really entertaining. They're not really fun to watch. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And let me know who the top 4 should have been in the comments also, because I'm curious what you guys have to say about that. But otherwise, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and the hot takes and the debates and everything else, because it's a video that I felt like was necessary to put out there. And this will fix the college football playoff. I promise you it'll fix it. So otherwise, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace out.